Alright guys, today we're here to do my final review on the new Infinity game board, the new 18.5-inch Arcade1up Infinity game table versus their other one that they had before, the giant 32 or 24 inch. This is the new smaller portable version, so let's go ahead and take a look.
Gaming tech, eating brekkie is the gaming tech. Going for a brekkie is the gaming tech. Gaming tech is the gaming tech. Gaming techie.
Alright guys, so here we are with the unboxing portion of it. I did do a full unboxing before. I just want to show you guys the packaging job. When you first open this up, you can see the flaps open up there, and then you got the Infinity game board there on the back. And I love the artwork, how it showcases a bunch of board game pieces on the side, really makes you feel inviting. And then of course you take this from the top off, and then you have your Infinity game board right there. I think they did a fantastic job with the packaging, and it definitely is an eye catcher with the packaging in the box they're sitting on the shelf if you pass it by in your store. Here's actually the actual packaging right here that we have, and again, I think it looks fantastic, and I think it's definitely going to have some eye-catching when you see it on a shelf like Best Buy or something. They got, you know, the 50 games that it includes, because it does come with 50 games pre-installed, and everything else is a la carte, where you buy them, you know, on their online store and stuff like that, and then they have their kind of like marquee games sitting right there. And here is the back packaging of it. Again, really well done. So show some of the games included there at the bottom, like Chutes and Ladders, Hungry Hippos, Simon. You know, Monopoly's on there, Fling Hockey, Tic-Tac-Toe, Space Tennis. It's not just board games that are on this device. There's a lot more than just board games. You can see some of the board games, like the marquee ones there sitting right there. Risk, Hughes and Q's, Tapple, Pandemic, Ticket to Ride, you know, Batman, Monopoly and stuff. But they do have other games that are more arcadey games and stuff like that, as opposed to just board games on here. So you're getting a little bit for everybody on the table. And speaking of the library, it should be pretty obvious at this point that obviously the only way you're going to like this product is if you actually like the current library. So, of course, if you're thinking about buying an Infinity game board like this one, or even the bigger 32-inch version, then you should obviously go on their website and check out the over 100 games that they currently have and see if the catalog speaks to you. They are adding games every month, but we'll have to see how that progresses and what they actually add. Sometimes they add board games, sometimes it's arcade games, sometimes it's children games. So it just depends on what you're looking for. So I would definitely urge you to check out the library before you plunk down a bunch of money and decide if this is something you want to, invest into if you like the current library of games that are actually offered. So let's take a look at the hardware here. Again, this is an 18.5-inch screen, as you guys are looking at here. And it definitely is much smaller than the other version, as you guys are looking at here, compared on top of it to what the other version was to this one. It definitely is a lot smaller than what the Infinity Game Table 32-inch version that you guys are seeing here that I have. So it comes with some caveats that we're going to be talking about while you play certain games and stuff, and some tables will be better than others for certain games, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Right now on the hardware side, it does have these really cool legs on the bottom here that you can actually expand if you just kind of press them in, as you guys can see there. And you can kind of elevate it a little bit off the table, and you could do that to both sides, or you can just elevate it on two sides if you want to play the pinball game that they just released. Maybe they have other ones coming out, later on. But you can elevate both legs, kind of get a little bit more height on the actual table if you want to, and then you just kind of press a button to kind of lower it. So it's really simple. I even did it one-handed here while recording. So that's really, really simple. And then over here you got the power button right here, and then you have the volume up and down right here, where you can kind of raise the volume or lower it. As far as the buttons go, that's pretty much it here. If we look at the back of the unit here, you do have a power cord. Unfortunately, this does not have a built-in battery or anything like that, so you will have to have this plugged in. Or if you're going to use an external battery pack, could use the one that you got that they have on their site, like for the 32-inch, like the one I have here, and then you can just use this on here. But of course, it's not going to have anywhere to go because you would plug it in on the bottom. And you're not going to have like a place for it, but it does fit nicely underneath it at least. So when I took this to my family's house, I kind of just connected it to the bottom and just kind of left this right here, and it has no place for it, but at least it fits nicely on the bottom and it's not in anyone's way, and it kind of just sits there. So it's not too bad. Of course, I would have preferred them to have an internal battery built in, especially for something that they're trying to say is portable, because it is obviously much more portable than the bigger 32-inch, which weighs way too much, and I never want to carry that around again to a family or friend's house. This one obviously being 18.5 inches, obviously one of the benefits of it is how easy it is to carry and how much, how lightweight it actually is. So let's talk about the interface on this thing really quickly. The interface is obviously exactly the same as what it would be on the 32-inch or the 24-inch that came before this. Everything's the same. Of course, everything's just smaller. So you're not going to find anything different specific to this version. You'll still have your My Games over here that you can scroll through. The interface, they're using the exact same processor inside on this as the 32-inch. So the processor is not upgraded in any way. So you're not going to find that running any smoother when it comes to just manipulating around. It's kind of be pretty similar. You're going to have your categories here that you can kind of rotate through to see what you have installed. That's online play, computer opponents, games that are for 4 players. All the stuff that we had from the interface that I think they actually did a really good job on. You got your last played over here, so you can see what you last played. There's that pinball game I was talking about. And then you have your featured game sitting over here, and then of course you have the game store where you can kind of go in and check out, see the little ad of what things were coming soon. The featured games here at the corner again, and then everything's kind of organized by category. And as you can see here, you can scroll. It's not perfectly smooth. I think it's smooth enough for something like this. Of course, like I said, it's not perfect, but it does work really well, for a table of this size. And again, you have all those different options that you've had here. Connected play, where you can play some of these games online, is available on here. So most of these games offer one player or computer opponents, and you have all those categories that you can select right there. They have over 100 games on here on the library, and of course the library is going to be the biggest deal to people, and that's going to be something that you guys can look up online to see their full catalog of games and decide if this table's for you. They do have some board games. I just talked about them in the intro there. But obviously, they have a little bit for everything. This is not just strictly a hardcore board gaming table. You're not going to find, the most hardcore board games on here. This is going to be general family, where your kids, your family, and people who love board games might all be able to gather around the table and play stuff together. They do have some good stuff coming, they said. They have like board games that are coming up in the next couple months. So we'll see how that goes. But again, it's not going to be board games all the time, and I wouldn't be expecting, unless it's something drastically changes, for you to get the most hardcore of board games on a device like this. They're going after the mass market, so I would assume that, maybe Catan, since they have Asmodee, is going to be something that we may see one day, hopefully, considering that they have some of their other games on here. We'll see what happens. I will say, though, one of the things that does benefit on here, even though the processor is exactly the same on this, something that is noticeably better is the touchscreen responsiveness. So even though the CPU is better, the 18.5-inch screen that they're using is just much more responsive when grabbing pieces. It's not 100% perfect. It's not like one-to-one movement like an iPad or something, but it makes playing these games, much, much easier, as I'm sitting here destroying the PC, getting all 5 of those in a row. But you can tell, if you played the 32-inch version like I have, as much as I have, you can tell that this is a much more responsive screen, and the touchscreen, is following your movements a lot better. Playing games like this is a lot easier to play. Playing a game like air hockey, like you guys are seeing here, is definitely much more responsive than it used to be. Again, it's not perfect. It's still obviously a little bit delayed with your actual finger, but if you've played this, if you played games like this, on the original 32-inch or 24-inch, you know that it was really hard to play these because there was even less responsive than this one. This one is actually definitely more playable than the other one. It's obviously hard for me to play behind a view screen right now. But like I said, if you've played both of these, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about if you get your hands on this. And this definitely feeling more responsive, even if it's not 100% perfect. I'm going to give you guys one more example of that. When I used to play Monopoly all the time, grabbing the pieces and stuff, sometimes my finger, when I was going over it, sometimes would lose the tracking, I guess, of my finger. You can see this is much more smooth. It actually grabs the pieces, pretty quickly. Like I said, this is much better than what the 32-inch version that I have is. But at the same token here, and I've said this in my 32-inch review and stuff like that, the caveat with that is, even though that's true, that this is obviously working a lot smoother, for most board games, it really doesn't matter because you're just playing board games, and having quick, fast action on the touchscreen is not obviously the most important thing. The problem is when you start getting into some of the other games that they've added, like the ones I just showed before, like air hockey and some of the other, and fling hockey and stuff that are more arcade experiences that you want the fast-paced nature. So from my experience, comparing the 32-inch and the 24-inch version, or the 18.5-inch version that I have here, as somebody who's had all three, this is definitely the much more responsive way of playing. If you, the way I would do it, the 32-inch version is going to be my go-to for games like Ticket to Ride and Monopoly and stuff, because that touch responsiveness is still plenty good enough, and it's not something needed to be 100% precise, and it works well. But if I want to play twitchy things like fling hockey or air hockey and stuff, then this is definitely going to be a better way to play it with a smaller nature because of that faster touchscreen responsiveness. Now we have a game here like Ticket to Ride and stuff like that, And one of the things I wanted to show off that a lot of people are interested in is, does this work well for games that require 4, 5, or 6 people, because the screen is obviously much smaller. They do come with these cardboard pieces, the same cardboard pieces that you guys may recognize if you guys got the 32-inch version. These are just some cardboard cutouts, and they come with smaller versions, so you can kind of use them as your privacy screen, as you guys are looking at here. If I put this down, you can kind of use it as your privacy screen just like that, and then you can kind of manipulate the cards and nobody else can see it, yada yada yada. Select your cards and Ticket to Ride, and then, you know, kind of have that in front of you if you want to, so nobody else can see it. And if you have another one next to it, if I grab this here and kind of put it out and turn this around the correct way, and I did something like this, obviously you could do that and, you know, do the exact same thing. Now, of course, you're going to be sitting a lot closer to each other because this is obviously a much smaller table, so you're going to have to obviously talk to your friend and be like, hey, don't look at my cards, you know, don't be that guy. Because obviously it is going to be harder to play, even though this is definitely doable and it looks great. And I actually don't have an issue with the size of the table. I was surprised. The Monopoly one I just showed you before, and the board, obviously it's a much smaller version, and I prefer to play it on the 32-inch. But from my experience playing it, it's actually not that bad on here. It's still a lot of fun, and you're not going to be, you know, again, bigger is always going to be better, but you can see this really clearly. There's no issue with playing games like Monopoly and Ticket to Ride. Everything fits on the screen just fine. The only issues that I have is games that require this thing here. Obviously, by nature, you're going to have a lot tighter of a space, and they're going to be just a little bit harder to play, because when you have these on here, you're going to have to rely that the other person's not looking over their shoulder as easily, because there's just less room for you to be able to see those cards. So it's just something you're going to have to know to deal with when you're kind of sitting next to each other. Obviously, I can fold these a little bit better so you can see less, but you get the idea. Something I wanted to mention, though, is that, of course, this is only really pertaining when it's Ticket to Ride, because there's obviously other games like Oh No and Spades and stuff like that. When you're playing that and everyone has their own corner, obviously it becomes a lot easier to just use these little blockers, and then it's not as big of a deal because everyone has their own corner. You're not huddled into 2 people per corner, and at that point it becomes a lot more, you know, playable in that fashion. So I think for the majority of board games, you're going to have a ton of fun, and it's going to be great, especially if you're coming to this from the first time. Of course, if you're coming from the 32-inch, you're always going to be like, damn, it definitely looks a lot better on the 32-inch for these board games because the board obviously is bigger. But if you're not coming from that and you want something portable like this to be able to take to your family and friends' house, because that 32-inch is definitely not portable, as somebody who tried doing it multiple times, it's not fun. I think you're going to have a good middle ground here, and I think you're going to have a ton of fun, again, with the caveat that some of the games that require hidden information will be a little bit harder to play, and you'll have to finagle some things. I still think it's playable because I did it at my family's house, but it's definitely not as good as the 32-inch version. So let me go ahead and give you guys my final thoughts now on what I think. So again, if I consider the fact that I'm coming at this from a 32-inch version and I have this one, what should you buy or what should I do? I would say, again, that the touchscreen responsiveness on this is much better to be able to track your fingers. So if you want to play these arcade classic games like air hockey and fling hockey and stuff like that, this is definitely going to do better. Even Simon does better on it because you're tapping the screen fast. Those games are definitely going to be better on here. But if you only care about the board games and you're playing majority of that, it's not going to be as big of a deal. Games like Tapple, Ticket to Ride, Monopoly, Pandemic, Risk, those games are not going to have anything to do with the actual, you know, touch responsiveness. It's still going to be plenty fine the way that I've been playing on the 32-inch version. I have a fantastic time and never really complained before, but it definitely is noticeable when you play the faster arcade games on here. So if that's what you're looking for and you want that better touch responsiveness for those games, the 18.5 version is definitely going to be the one that you want to get. However, if you don't care about that and you just want the, you know, obviously it is going to be better on a bigger screen. You're going to have the Monopoly board that's bigger. The animations are going to be bigger. You know, it's kind of obvious. But I will say, like I just talked about, that it was surprising on how much better that, on how playable it was on this 18.5-inch screen, considering that, you know, some of the board games only take up like a square right here, and then the rest of it is kind of filled in with the player, so you're only really getting a square board right here. And it was actually not that bad. But again, it shouldn't be that surprising. I mean, even though this is an 18.5-inch screen and it is smaller, you know, it's still bigger than an iPad. You know, when you grab your iPad and you play some of the board games on there handheld, it's going to be great if you're definitely playing it by yourself. Now, of course, on here, you're trying to play with multiple players, which is the whole idea of this thing. But if you're playing with games like Hidden Information that I just showed you before, then, of course, the Hidden Information is not going to be, you know, as good as if you were playing it on the 32-inch version, but that's probably as expected. Overall, guys, I think if you guys are looking for a size table like this that's more portable to be able to take to your family and friends' house, it's definitely a viable option as long as you're okay with the caveats that I talked about in this video. I also think it's a great companion if you're really into the ecosystem. I'm hoping that they actually send me one because this is something that I'm borrowing. It's not actually mine, so I can do more reviews for you guys, so I can do comparisons because I think that would be really useful for you guys to see. When a new game comes out, a new board game comes out, and you're like, hey, I want to see what the board looks like on the 32-inch version compared to the 18.5-inch version. Those are the kind of videos I want to make, but hopefully they send me one. I'm in touch with Arcade1up. We'll see what happens. So I can, every time I do game videos, you guys can kind of see the comparisons back and forth, and you guys could decide, in the future which version you want to play it on and what table you might want to buy, depending on how those games actually look like. But for right now, like I said, it's a ton of fun. If you guys want the 18.5-inch version to be able to take to your family and friends' house, it's definitely a viable option. But in my opinion, if you're not really going to be taking it portably all the time and you're just going to have it sitting in your house, then I would definitely prefer the 32-inch version because everything is bigger, obviously. And even though it has a little bit less touchscreen responsiveness, I think if you're buying this for board games and stuff, you'll get a lot more out of the 32-inch version if you're just having it sitting stationary at home. But again, the portability will suffer, so it's up to you guys. So, guys, that is it for this video. If you guys have any questions about anything you guys have heard, let me know down in the comments below. If not, thank you guys for watching. Till next time.